From the passing of the 19 Amendments in 1920, women's life all over the United States began to change on a significant scale. The amendment allowed for a wave of freedom and liberation in women's daily lives in the 20th century. Prior to the 1920s, women had to stay in separate spheres compared to men, and opportunities outside their domestic field were minimal. In The Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott, Alcott portrayed the cult of domesticity in her story and showed Marmee as a role to break the popular notion about how women were supposed to behave only in the domestic field. However, in The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Daisy represented the woman in the Roaring Twenties and showed how they were different in the range of role compared to that in the Victorian era. Based on Marmot's behavior to act deeply moral and to teach her daughter to see the proper way to behave in The Little Woman, Marmee must give Daisy advice that Daisy should live her own life instead of what others want her to do, and take her family as a priority, which would help Daisy fulfill her role as a newly equal woman in the 1920s instead of neglecting any of her responsibilities for her dream. To begin, Marmee should give Daisy advice that Daisy should live her own life instead of what people around her want her to do. In The Great Gatsby, Daisy makes the most significant decision in her life to marry Tom Buchanan instead of her true lover, Jay Gatsby. Although this decision changed her entire life, the decision failed to fully portray Daisy's own opinion. For example, on the day before the marriage, Daisy initially refused to marry Tom. She took out the pearl necklace that Tom gave and shouted to her acquaintance, "Take him down and give him back to whoever they belong to." Tell him all. Daisy changed her mind. This clearly shows how Daisy is not favorite for the marriage with Tom and believes that wealth, represented by the pearl necklace, is not enough to take her love fully. However, her acquaintance locked the door and got her into a cold bath and tried to persuade Daisy to marry Tom, which resulted in Daisy hanging the pearl around her neck and marrying Tom. In this regard, Marmee would provide her message to Daisy about how she should live her life. Contradicting to Daisy's decision, Marmee tells her daughter to be what they want to be instead of marrying a rich man. As a woman in the Victorian era, Marmee knew how much genuine happiness can be had in a plain little house where the daily bread is earned, and some privation gives sweetness to the few pleasures. While women in this era tended to marry rich men for a better life, Marmee delivers a sincere message that money is a needful and precious thing, and when well used, a noble thing. But I never want you to think it is the first or only prize to strive for. I'd rather see you poor man's wife if you are happy, beloved, contented, than queens of thrones, without self-respect and peace. This also applies to Daisy as her reluctant decision to be a queen of throne for her better life resulted in her biggest regret, which is shown in Daisy's dialogue to Nick. "I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'd be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool." Daisy hopes that her daughter will be fool enough not to experience the harsh life as a woman and not feel the same pain as Daisy's. However, this belief restricted the role of woman in Daisy's mind, even though the condition of woman was becoming equal to men in the 1920s. In the article by Estelle Friedman, Friedman mentions that the winning of suffrage had an effect on women's rights as it consolidated women's position as men equal. Even in the era that suppressed women's rights, as political historians considered them irrelevant and wrote nothing about them, Marmee educated the daughters to do what they want to do, while Daisy did nothing actively to change her condition, even if she made a regretful decision. Marmee's advice will be critical for this naive Daisy to reflect on her life. Also, Marmee should give Daisy advice that Daisy should take her family as a priority instead of adultery relationship with Gatsby. In The Great Gatsby, Daisy said, even though if she liked Gatsby now, it is true that she did love Tom once. However, Daisy imagines the possibility of what if I had married Gatsby, even though she already has a family with a child to afford. During the conversation between Tom and Gatsby at the hotel, Daisy clarifies her relationship with these two men. She cried to Gatsby, "Oh, you want too much. I love you now, isn't that enough? I can't help what's past. I did love once, but I loved you too." However, in Little Woman, Marmee is one who knows what to keep for her priority, family. When Joe asks Marmee for a moral story, Marmee tells a story about four girls Through the story, Marmee delivers a message to Joe that thinking about what we already have is essential instead of demanding more. At the end of her story, she intentionally adds the advice: when you feel discontented, think over your blessing and be grateful. Women in the domestic sphere have their own roles that men could not do. In the article by K. Boardman, Boardman described a family as a secure, productive unit with men accumulating money to support home and family, and women regulate household consumption in activities and use her time to make the home run smoothly. Mommy would agree with Boardman's decision of the family role and disagree with Daisy's attitude to worsen her family relationship simply because she misses her past lover. Moving from the Victorian era to the Roaring Twenties, values that people prioritized shifted and offered greater opportunities for women to gain equal rights as men. As a woman who lived in the harsh Victorian era, Mommy must advise Daisy that she should live her own life and take her family as a priority so that Daisy can fully perform that woman's role in the Roaring Twenties. Like how Marmee advised Daisy, there will be a point that Daisy could also advise the woman living in the 2022 as society nowadays change from hours to hours.